do it.
All right, cool. So welcome back, Morse Code Podcast, episode 52, I think, losing track. We are lucky enough to be joined by Ben Volin of the Boston Globe, does all things Patriots, all things football. Ben, thanks for swinging by. How are you on this football Tuesday?
It's been kind of a crazy couple of weeks. I've been thinking a lot about the Denver Broncos over the last 10 days. Ready to kick this game off.
Absolutely.
It's been a very bizarre season. And, it's like, of course, there's only two teams in the league dealing with COVID right now. Of course, the Patriots are one of them. It's just like par for the course with this team. If there's a crazy story in the NFL, it's always going to involve the Patriots. So yeah, I'm glad they're not the Titans level where it's full blown outbreak.
What a nightmare.
Of course, it's the Patriots involved in this stuff.
So I'm wondering if I know these things aren't connected, but it is a big coincidence. I mean, the Patriots had, I think, the highest number of opt-outs preseason. And now, of course, they're the second biggest outbreak once we got started. Crazy. I don't know. But the other story that came up, just to kind of get right into it, was obviously Cam was the first name and then Gilmore. Do you think there's any more to the story about Cam Newton and Gilmore? There was a story they had dinner together, some other stuff. Do you think there's kind of any rhyme or reason to kind of how this kind of came about in the Patriots locker room, or was it just coincidental with Cam?
Well, first of all, to build off what I said before, not only, of course, are the Patriots involved, but of course it's Cam Newton and Stephon Gilmore, like the two biggest players. So it wouldn't be a Patriots story without that. Mm-hmm. Interestingly, I saw that Stephon Gilmore's wife, Gabrielle, went on Twitter today and denied it and said it was
fake
incorrect
news.
That they had. Although I think if we want to parse words, maybe she said it was incorrect that they went out for dinner. Maybe they went to someone's house for dinner. Maybe they were, maybe we're just talking semantics here. I don't have any additional reporting to add.
Yeah.
I just know that I believe everyone considers Gilmore kind of like he was a close contact of Cam. And, everyone's kind of like breathing a big sigh of relief right now. They're not completely out of the woods yet, but they managed the spread of this pretty well. I mean, for Gilmore to come back the day after that Chiefs game and test positive was like everyone's worst nightmare, not just the Patriots, but the NFL.
Yeah.
Given everything that they've gone through with the Titans. So everyone was just holding their breath to see if it would, the Patriots would be the next team to suffer kind of an outbreak. And thank goodness they haven't. Like I said, they're not completely out of the woods yet, but they've managed the spread of this thing very well. Interestingly, the NFL has changed their protocols. They issued a memo on Monday night, sent it out to all 32 teams. And basically one of the changes to their protocols, it's basically a Patriot rule. Now they're going to, if someone tests positive, they're going to go back and do the contact tracing and look at all their close contacts,
Mm-hmm.
and they're going to, Alan Sills, who's the NFL's chief medical officer, and some of their other medical experts, they're going to review every close contact case. And if they deem you high risk, like especially close contact, now you're in isolation for 5 days and you're not with the team and you may have to miss a game if that's what it comes down to. So, I know the Patriots, they took 2 planes to Kansas City. One of them had 20 people on them that were deemed close contacts of Cam Newton. I don't think all 20 players would have been prohibited from playing, but I do think it would have, someone like Gilmore probably would have come up as a high risk, and he would have not. So, the NFL, they had an owners meeting today on Tuesday, a virtual owners meeting, and they had Dr. Alan Sills and a few other people, speak to the media about just some updates. And they certainly didn't apologize to the Patriots for putting them in that situation. And they didn't admit that they created a Patriot rule, but I think everyone can read between the lines here and see that they clearly understood that what they put the Patriots through against Kansas City can't happen again.
What a nightmare. Yeah, I'm with you. And I think I did see something about that report you just talked about, because I think it was someone on the Chiefs, wasn't it? A fullback or something who was part of the close contact protocol or something like that. Maybe I misheard.
Well, I know today the Chiefs put Foxborough native Anthony Sherman on the COVID list. That's just
okay.
A random occurrence. But no, all I know is that they try to do close. They do contact tracing, which is good.
Right.
It's important.
Yeah.
But now they're going to classify different levels of close contact. And if you're, if you, spent a half hour with a guy in a room, in a film room, or if you went out to dinner with a guy, they're probably going to make you a high risk close contact and make you quarantine for 5 days to, account for that incubation period.
Sure. Yeah, that makes sense. I would assume, I don't know if you know this for sure or not, I would assume all these meetings, everything in the facilities, they must all be wearing masks all the time. That has to be obviously.
Well, they're supposed to be. And
good correction. Yeah.
And I think that's part of the Titans deal is what the NFL is investigating is were they wearing the mask all the time? And again, part of the new rules that they sent out Monday night, enforcement is really being stepped up.
Oh yeah.
Teams now have to produce video every week. They have to upload their original unedited video to NFL security, and they have to prove, the NFL security is going to ask for video from certain parts of the team facility.
Yeah.
Excuse me, to see if guys were wearing their masks and doing what they're supposed to be doing. And, what's interesting is they're contact tracing and they're finding close contacts. But if everyone were doing it correctly and if they were actually adhering to the protocols, there really wouldn't be close contacts. And Ryan Tannehill had the quote the other day where he's like, I guess we just have to treat everyone like they have the virus. And it's like, yes. Ding, ding. That is how it works. Like the testing does not save you. It has to be distancing. It has to be masks. And I think guys were getting lax about it partially because the NFL was doing so well in its bout against COVID. But I think that's one thing you're going to see. Like Belichick today on Tuesday morning, he did a Zoom call from Gillette Stadium and he was wearing his mask and he's in the room all by himself doing that Zoom, but he's still wearing his mask. And that was the first time he's worn it for the Zooms. Usually he takes it off for media purposes. So I think you're going to see a much stricter adherence to the rules, which include wearing masks, which include social distancing. These guys, I think they're realizing you just don't know who's got the virus and you don't want to contribute to the spread.
Yes, that is a good rule of thumb to I think to adhere by during this whole thing, whether in the NFL or not. But one thing I wanted to get your opinion on, or I guess if you would know obviously more than we would, I've seen kind of back and forth between Cam and being able to play this week. Is there different quarantine rules for asymptomatic and things of that? Like, is there a chance Cam can play Sunday?
There's definitely a chance
to happen for that.
Yeah, there's definitely a chance he could play.
Okay.
We're all kind of guessing. I don't think anyone truly knows how he's doing. We haven't gotten a good status update on Cam. I know his dad said.
You mean Belichick didn't answer that question clearly?
Yeah, no, shocking that Belichick played.
Wow.
Yeah. You'll be shocked to learn that. Everything's a mystery down in Foxborough. Cecil Newton, Cam's dad, did an interview with one of the Charlotte TV stations over the weekend. And he said he thinks Cam didn't really have any symptoms and was doing okay. So the rules are if you show symptoms, you have to be out for 10 days and you have to be cleared to return. So even if he did show symptoms, he could be back by the Broncos game. That'll be 15 days by then. So he could be back for that. Realistically, if he's not practicing this week, he's probably not playing. I would think that Belichick wants his quarterback to be practicing this week. But if he hasn't shown symptoms, and I think that's what everyone believes, he can return. He could return anytime. He just has to either pass have consecutive negative tests 24 hours apart. And that could be on day 1 or day 2. It doesn't have to be a certain length of time. Or he just needs 10 days since he first tested positive. As long as he's asymptomatic the whole time. The NFL, they've discovered what they call persistent positives, where guys who get the virus and they just keep testing positive, even though the virus is kind of out of their system and they're not really showing signs anymore. So they've had to tweak their testing protocol because guys were just testing positive over and over. So in theory, Cam can just come back after 10 days. So again, we don't know how he's doing. And if he's still feeling the symptoms, then, I don't know if he's going to be back, but I would think chances are pretty good that he can play this week. He might still have to be cleared by the medical staff, but getting the bye week and getting the week off will certainly, I think, benefit him getting back in the lineup sooner.
Yeah, that'd be nice.
Ben, I did have a question, but first I always like to let our guests know that if you get any sort of important text or, I know you said you didn't have any additional information on Gilmore and the wife, but if you got some breaking news, feel free to just flash your phone up on the screen or read it out to us. Just let us know.
You got it. I mean, I'm not nearly as important as Adam Schefter, but if something does come across my phone, you guys will be the first to know. We'll break it right here.
Much appreciated.
My question is going to be kind of related to what you said earlier about, of course, the Patriots are related with this. So you've been covering the team since 13, right?
Correct. I got here Memorial Day weekend of 2013. And within the first week coming here, they signed Tebow, and that was a big deal back then. And I was like,
great sign.
Oh, this is going to be crazy. And little did I know that a month later, Aaron Hernandez would get arrested for murder. So that was, I just moved to Boston. I'm trying to get my bearings, and I'm
talking about polar opposites.
Yeah. I mean, truly. And it was interesting for me because I came from Florida and I covered the Gators with Tebow and Hernandez. So like I knew those guys, and I knew their background. I'd covered them for a few years. And then, for Aaron, I was fortunate in a way that I was covering that story because I had the Patriots connection and then had the Gators connection. So, I'm just trying to, learn a new job and figure out a new city. And then you just get, dropped into an insane story like that. And I mean, nothing's been that crazy since, but it's just been one thing after another with this team between, Deflategate and Tom Brady getting suspended and Robert Kraft and his whole thing. And then it's like, oh, by the way, they've also been to the Super Bowl 4 times and won 3 of them. So I have a lot of friends who cover, the different teams around the league. And I always tell them, like, I feel sorry for you. Like, what do you write about in the off season? Like, who's going to win left guard? Like the other teams, it must be so boring compared to what it's like covering the Patriots.
Who's the which long snapper are we going to draft in the 8th round?
Right, exactly. Yeah.
No, I guess kind of a 2-parter. Safe to say, number one, that the Pats are the biggest soap opera in the NFL, maybe even sports over that time period. And 2, I thought of this as you were saying it. Did you ever notice anything with Hernandez that would have made you think that there were things going on behind the scenes?
That's a great question.
Thank you. I'm a professional.
The short answer is no. I mean, obviously no one, I mean, no one thought the guy was a Boy Scout, and, everyone knew at Florida that he was someone that the coaches had to watch closely. And I think either he roomed with Tebow like his sophomore year, or Tebow was just like his
I didn't know
chaperone, basically.
I think they were roommates. Yeah, I've heard that.
And the coaching staff used to use Tebow and like pair him up with more at-risk guys to try hope that Tebow's goodness would kind of rub off on them. I will say this.
Wow, that's risky.
There was one episode that always stuck out to me. And it's not really an episode. It was an anecdote. One of my good friends when I lived in Gainesville was the late Ed Ashoff, great ESPN reporter who unfortunately passed away last winter at the young age of 34. Very tragic. But Ed was my good friend, and he was a student. He was an undergrad student when I lived in Gainesville, and he lived in a house full of guys, and next door to them was a house full of girls. And Hernandez was dating one of the girls in the house. So he was always over there, and the 2 houses, they were friends. So they were always hanging out. And guys, what rating is this podcast? Are we PG-13 or are we R?
No, say whatever you want.
PVMA.
So I always remember Ed Ashoff told me, he's like, dude, Aaron Hernandez is the biggest piece of shit you've ever met. I was like, really? He's like, yeah, like we have a party and he'll bring his boys over and they'll purposely trudge mud through your house, or they'll smoke cigarettes in your living room, or something out of your kitchen will, be stolen. Like, just acting like pieces of shit all the time.
It's like a high school, like, shithead house party.
Exactly.
This sounds like Rick James in the Dave Chappelle skit.
Right. Yeah. Like, fuck your couch. Yeah. So does that mean he's going to be a murderer? Like, no. But
right.
That always stuck out to me was when Ed Ashoff told me that Hernandez was just a truly terrible person. But no one knew, and even the Patriots, they gave him a $40 million contract. They didn't know. And, I wonder about Hernandez if he had gotten drafted by the Houston Texans or the Kansas City Chiefs or the Seattle Seahawks. Would he have been able to avoid the trouble, that he found himself in just by being so close to home and so close to trouble?
That's a great point. It reminds me a lot about the Chris Herron story. He was, I don't know if you saw it 30 for 30 or not, even just remember from the Celtics. He was like a troubled kid, grew up around Boston, drugs, crime, whatever, got drafted or went to school somewhere else, came back to the Celtics. And to your point, you get swept right back where you left off. Like when you just come back to that environment you're used to. So good point. I mean, that was just such a bizarre, it wasn't even, eventually it became not even a sports story. It was a true crime before true crime was the thing. You know what I mean? Like following like a true crime type of story. But
yeah, and I got a lot of crap. I go on WEI and I got a lot of crap from them for saying I felt bad for Hernandez, and it's just a tragedy all the way around. And I still do. I mean, it's to see a guy flush away his life like that is just
sure. No, if you saw, did you see the Netflix documentary?
I've seen a lot of I think I actually didn't watch the Netflix because I'm just kind of Hernandezed out. Like everyone who's got a book, like I get all the free books and all the documentaries, and I've like it's a horrific. The more you learned about it, like his brother wrote a book and said that Aaron was raped as a kid, and by like a babysitter in the neighborhood or something, and just everything about the whole story is just gut wrenching. So,
that's why I brought it up, because there's a lot of that stuff in the documentary that you've probably seen more about than I have. That was one of the few I've seen. And it's like, to your point, it's a fine line. It's like, it seems odd coming out of your mouth saying, "Oh, I feel really bad for this, mass murderer."
Right.
But there's a lot of shit that went into it, I'm sure, that didn't help or that, pushed him in that direction.
I mean, this guy was scarred. He was scarred from a young age. And again, to see someone who has so much in front of him, to see him throw it away was really tragic.
That's one of the better double tight end systems I've ever seen.
I mean, who knows?
That was the part that was swept under the rug, the football aspect of it.
No doubt.
Lost a great tight end.
No doubt. I mean, just think of what a tandem he and Gronkowski would have been. And I know the Patriots won in 2014, but they, maybe they would have won in 13. Maybe they would have won more Super Bowls.
Yeah.
Obviously, it would have changed a lot about the Patriots' history. But maybe it was, maybe in a way, it benefited the Patriots because maybe it shored up some of their scouting techniques and some of the background.
I would hope so.
Info they're doing, and maybe think twice about bringing on some characters.
Let's ask for references that aren't related to the guy.
Correct. I figured I'd ask you this. So another part of the current news, and I think you've done a great job reporting on this too. There's been a lot of reports, at least, about conversation in the Patriots locker room about players being frustrated, players being upset. I know Jason McCourty was pretty vocal about it. I think James White came out as well. What do you know about any insight into what really is going on in the locker room stemming from some of the Kansas City logistics and stuff like that?
So I definitely think Jason McCourty speaking up for a lot of guys.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if was this like massive uprising, but I think a lot of guys were wondering what the heck. Like we just saw with the Titans what happened. We're all, half the team here is exposed to Cam Newton, and we're just going to go on a plane and then you're going to make us play against the Broncos when we didn't practice all week. What's all this talk about health and safety? So I think a lot of guys, especially the older guys who have more perspective, Slater, the McCourtys, the more the veterans on the team are sitting there being like, none of this was verbalized to us back in July when we were given the option to opt out. Like they feel like they were being sold a bill of goods a little bit, and not just from the NFL, but also from their union. And, Jason McCourty, I give him a lot of credit for having the courage to speak up when a lot of guys didn't.
Mm-hmm.
His brother, Devin McCourty, I'm wondering if there's something going on there because, he missed practice on Saturday for a non-injury reason. And that was when the Patriots were still going to play this game. And, we haven't gotten any clarity on his situation. So I'm curious, what he's thinking of right now. And, is he someone that's having second thoughts about playing through this whole thing? I know he was very close to opting out to begin with. So, I don't know how much the Patriots, like how much input they truly had, how much impact they had on postponing the Denver game, but they let it be known. And I know Belichick, I have been told that Belichick's been pretty proactive with the league. He's been pretty engaged, speaking, defending his team, speaking up, talking about protocols. What can we do here to make it safe? Belichick was the one who decided to close the facility last Friday when the NFL didn't make him. They would have been allowed to practice, but Belichick said no. So the Patriots have done a pretty good job of looking out for themselves, and they definitely were not happy about the Chiefs game and all that. And I think you see it with the rules now. They changed the rules. They didn't call it a Patriot rule, but it's a Patriot rule. And now if you have close contact, if you're high risk, you're not going to be playing for a few days. So the Patriots were not pleased, but they're not the only one. The Titans are, they kind of rolled their eyes at the testing. Tannehill was saying guys with blatant symptoms were not testing positive, and guys with no symptoms were testing positive, just kind of all over the map. And then all these other teams like the Jaguars and the Jets and the Chargers, their schedule's been blown up. I think the Chargers had 4 games moved.
They got screwed.
And they're like, what do we do? This is all because of the Patriots. Like, why do we have our games switched? And the Broncos are like, well, why didn't we get a real bye week? We had to practice all week. So players are definitely a little upset with the league and the NFLPA right now. But, it's a messy season, and there's no, smooth way to playing through a pandemic. And, there's probably going to be more misunderstandings as we go through the season.
Yeah, I mean that we talked about it before. I still found it hard to believe we got this far. Like when was the Titans thing? Week 3, the day after week 3, pretty much.
Yeah,
it's like that Monday
that's
after.
A great point. I mean, training camp went, I think, better than anyone expected.
100%. Almost almost unbelievably well.
Yeah,
I'm a little skeptical about how well it went.
Made you think like, okay, how are they cheating the testing or something?
Yeah, something's up.
But it did go really well, and I think maybe some players and coaches got a little lax. They don't socially distance as much. But also, I think even though they weren't in a bubble, I do think training camp was kind of a bubble. You're so busy and you're just trying to make the team that you're just football all day and you're not going out. Now that you're in the season, you have a little more freedom and flexibility. I do think that is contributing to guys having more incidences of COVID. And then, of course, the pandemic is getting worse. I mean, we see it here in Massachusetts. Sure. The case numbers are rising. It's Green Bay, Wisconsin is like the epicenter of it right now.
Out of nowhere.
Yeah. And it's just there's just a lot of COVID in the country, and it's only getting worse. So, that was the theme from the NFL today. They said, like, yes, we've considered a bubble. Yes, we're considering week 18. Yes, we'll consider pressing pause. But they're not there yet. They're going to exhaust every option before they have to start doing that stuff. And they still have bye weeks to play with. They still can, play around with the schedule. But you got to think if they're dealing with this already in week 4 and week 5, that, more is coming.
Not great. Yeah.
Ben, question for you. Again, going back to the fact that, now you've been here for 7 years. We've asked this of a few other guys who have covered the team. What is your funniest, or I guess maybe most uncomfortable run-in with Bill?
Huh.
Like post-game or even, I guess maybe if you saw him in the hallway or something.
Yeah. Well, it's like I see Bill at the owners' meetings all the time. The Patriots do a pretty good job of creating separation. So it is hard to just have like run-ins with Belichick, but the owners' meetings when you're
he's not a big small talk guy, just the water cooler guy.
Well, what's funny is he can be engaging.
Yeah.
I've sat in on WEEI sometimes,
sure.
Like on a Monday, I filled in when he does his thing,
and
he shows up early and stays late and shoots the breeze and is very engaging. And we'll talk about the Celtics game last night. And
is he in the studio for that? When like pre-COVID, would he come in for that?
So they have a studio in Gillette Stadium.
Oh, I see. Okay.
And those guys, the EEI guys, would go down and do the show from Gillette that day, and Bill will just pop in.
Yeah.
And so he's very engaging when he wants to do that. But then like at the owners' meetings, it's like every time you think you're good with him, he just walks right by you. And every time you think, oh, that guy hates me, he's like, hey, what's up, Ben? He gives you a punch on the shoulder and busts your balls about your shirt or something. So
it's all mind games.
Yeah, you never know where you stand with Belichick, and I've learned that I'm not the only one with that. That is kind of how he keeps people. A funny Belichick story is like I not every year, but some years I'll get a Christmas card from him, and it's like, oh wow, Belichick sent you a Christmas card. But then on the inside, it's literally just he'll write his Ben, and then it'll be printed Merry Christmas, and then he'll just write Bill. Like the only thing he actually writes are Ben and Bill. And so it's like, okay, is this passive aggressive? Is he actually is he actually mad at me? And he's just sending me like a very bare minimum Christmas card. So again, you never know where
mind
you
games. Yeah. That's hilarious.
Yeah. And he's I found interesting when he was talking about when his mom unfortunately passed away a couple weeks ago. He talked about how he was an only child, And maybe I knew that, but I didn't remember that. And I was like, oh, actually,
Yeah, I don't think I knew that.
makes sense then when you think about his personality and
Yeah.
his people skills. You know, that actually might make a little sense that he was an only child.
Any
Yeah, that makes sense.
instances where you were like, oh man, Bill's gonna treat me like the way that he's done famously with some other reporters? Like any questions where he responded and you were like, damn it.
No, to me, I want to ask those questions because those are the best answers.
Sure.
Those are the clips that get played on the news.
100%.
Like on to Cincinnati. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, he's not answering your question, but that's still the reaction. And you're obviously asking the right question if he's giving you, I'm not there to ask, softball questions and like, Bill, how hard did you guys try today? I would be like, no, Bill, what happened on 4th down? Why'd you guys blow your timeout situation or whatever? Just this past January, the day after the Titans loss, he always tries to head things off at the pass. Like he knew obviously everyone wants to talk about Brady's future. So his technique is he'll say an opening statement where he'll say everything he wants to say. And then he'll take questions and then he'll just be like, yeah, I answered everything. Like I've said what So, and then even he'll try to cut you off while you're asking a question almost because he doesn't want the question even to appear on like the transcript later. And so I started to ask him about Tom and he cut me off and I pulled, I was like, hey, Bill, let me finish the question, please, if you don't mind. And I was like, you can answer it any way you want, but like, I'm going to ask this question. And so we kind of like went back and forth and it got a little snippy, but like, whatever, he's not the boss. He doesn't get to dictate what the questions are. He's allowed to answer them any way he wants, but at least show me the respect. Let me at least get the question out.
Yeah.
So you know what, I in a way, I think he respects the reporters who are willing to go back and forth with him a little bit and don't just cower. Like, guys who stand like, the Patriots they have so much power in the situation. They've grabbed so much control in these press conferences too. But, in the end, it's still supposed to be an information gathering session and everyone wants to know about Tom Brady's future. So I know you don't want to answer it, Bill, but I'm going to ask the question anyway.
Sounds good.
I've always like appreciated between you and Dan Shaughnessy the fact that you guys, no matter what the story is, like you're getting the story. It doesn't matter if you're cheering on the Patriots or saying something that could be misconstrued or construed as anti-Patriots. Like I'm sure you see your Twitter mentions and people are always
I don't know
like,
what you're talking about.
Yeah, trolling Ben Volin. And I'm always like, I find this way more informative. If I just wanted to hear guys just kind of like, kiss ass all day, I know where to tune in for that. So I've always appreciated you guys doing like the actual work.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. And
definitely.
Shaughnessy's the king. I'm just trying to be like him every day. Quick side note, Dan Shaughnessy is like the salt of the earth. He's like become such a great friend and mentor. And when I don't know if I've ever told him this, but when I moved here, I was like, oh, I have to work with this troll Shaughnessy, like how he's portrayed. And I could not have been more wrong. I mean, the guy is so humble and just such a great guy to work with. And he's like, hey, Benny, I don't know anything about the Patriots. Can I just run this by you real quick? Like he's super humble for as accomplished as he is. And such a great mentor and so easy to work with and a machine on deadline for these, 8:30 games. Like he writes these amazing columns and they're like, he's like out of there, like out of the stadium, while I'm still like, while Bill's still talking, but Shaughnessy's just an incredible coworker and writer and friend and mentor. And so it's been really fascinating getting a front row seat to watch him operate and do his job.
Hey, next time you guys are chatting, if you ever put in the good word, if everyone wants to come on a local podcast and talk to a couple knuckleheads like us, we'd love to have them. But we're recording this on a Tuesday. We got a football game to get back to. So we'll let you go. Appreciate your time. Before we let you go, Ben, where's the best place for people to find you online and keep following your work?
So please follow me on Twitter at Ben Volin. That's V as in Victor, OLIN. And on the Boston Globe website, bostonglobe.com.
Sounds good. All right. Ben Volin from the Boston Globe. Ben, thanks again, man. Appreciate your time. This was fun.
Right. Yeah, this was a lot of fun, guys. Thanks for having me.
Thanks, Ben.